Next, we're going to talk about branding in cannabis. James touched on this a little in his presentation, so we can see that it is a very important part of building a business. For this next presentation, I am honored to present Scott Seidewitz of the Seidewitz Group today to talk to you all about branding. For more than 17 years, his firm, the Seidewitz Group, has helped companies large and small use deep customer understanding to grow their top line. His clients include Intel, GE, Merck, Intuit, Alibaba, Teva Pharmaceuticals, and Align Technology, who are the makers of Invisalign.
Thank you. So we're going to be talking about using cutting-edge market research and branding techniques to build powerhouse cannabis brands. But before we do that, I want to start with a case study about Invisalign. Now, I know Invisalign isn't yet a huge brand in Latin America. So you might have heard of it. Actually, Mexico and Brazil are huge growth markets for Invisalign. But in the United States, this is a big brand. Instead of getting braces, you get a series of clear aligners like this. And they have been a client of my company for many years. I'd like to share this case study because it really highlights a lot of the branding and research techniques I'd like to talk to you about using in the cannabis field. So let me tell you a little bit about the situation with Invisalign around 10 years ago. Now they're doing great now, but 10 years ago they had a big problem. Their sales in North America were down, and they were even worse than this because they had brought out their Invisalign teen product, and it kind of masked the fact that their adult shipments were down even further. So they brought us in to try to address what's going on, how can we turn around our declining business. And we did three things for them. Let me just share with you what we did, and then I'll talk a little bit more about how we did it and why we did it. The first thing we did was we repositioned what the brand stands for to professionals. By professionals, I mean the dentists and orthodontists who would use Invisalign instead of traditional braces. So what they had been positioned as was, we're the clear alternative to braces. We're clear, you can't see us. That's their differentiation. We repositioned them to, we're a brand that constantly innovates to deliver the clinical results you expect so you can use it with more patients to grow your practice. So a whole different positioning to the dentists and orthodontists. We also repositioned the brand to consumers. Invisalign spends millions of dollars to get consumers to go in and ask for their product instead of braces. Again, they had positioned the brand as the clear alternative to braces. The positioning we came up with was, we really said they need to be focused more on emotion. So we repositioned them around, Invisalign gives you the confidence of a great smile. Let me actually show you the TV ad they developed based on that positioning that we developed.
One of the first things people notice about you is your smile. But if you're not confident about your teeth, bringing attention to your smile can make you uncomfortable. Invisalign can help. With a series of clear aligners that gradually straighten your teeth, Invisalign gives you the confidence of a great smile. And you can see the results in just a few months. Take the free self-assessment at Invisalign.com.
Okay, so the second thing we did was reposition the brand to consumers. We did one more thing with them, and that was we changed their product innovation strategy. Before they had been doing these small line extensions, we needed to pay off that promise from repositioning the brand about innovation. So they started improving the performance of their products so you could use it with more patients. So the doctors could. They came out with this series of improvements, G3, G4, G5, so that it actually worked better. Now, here's what happened after we did just these three things. Oh, I'm sorry, here are the three things that we did, and here's what happened. Their sales shot up, and actually this growth, 14% average annual growth, continued, and actually in the 2010 to 2018 period, their stock price went up more than 20 times. Now, the question is, why did we know, or at least have great confidence, that those three things would work? Well, there's three reasons, and these are really the kind of things that great brands use to build successful powerhouse brands. We had a deep understanding of their customers. We followed the best practices for brand strategy and for executing the brand strategy, developing that TV ad. And before we launched, we used research to test what we were doing. Okay, these are the things that great brands, the best brands in the world like Coke, Nike, Corona all use. These are the things that my firm, the Seidewitz Group, uses with all kinds of companies in the technology and healthcare and consumer products area to build strong brands. What I'd like to do today is share with you the best practices that these companies use to build powerhouse brands. And I'd also like to answer the question, can these techniques be used with cannabis brands? And there's one cannabis brand that we've used it with, this BAM one that I have up. So I'm going to show you how we use these techniques with this brand and what the results were. Okay? So again, there are three things that great brands use to succeed. They start with a deep customer understanding, they follow very specific best practices, and then before they launch, they test. Let's go through each of these in detail and talk about how you can apply them on your cannabis brands. The other thing I want to do is, these big companies spend millions of dollars on the research, on developing and testing their strategies. I want to share with you ways that you can do it without spending that kind of money, because I know a lot of cannabis brands don't have the kind of budgets that a Coca-Cola or a Corona has, okay? But let's start with deep customer understanding. What do I mean by that? Well, first of all, the good thing about deep customer understanding is the same things apply no matter who your audience is. Whether it's the Invisalign consumer, or if it's a parent preparing meals for their kids, or somebody buying motor oil, or a physician. We do a lot of marketing with pharmaceutical companies to influence physicians, or if it's somebody walking into a dispensary requesting a cannabis brand. The same types of deep customer understanding apply, and I'll even say this is not specific to any one country or any one culture, because it's all about understanding the customer. This applies across the country, across countries and across cultures. We have used these techniques in Europe, we've used them in Asia, we've used them in Latin America. Okay? The three things you want to understand when it comes to deep customer understanding are needs. What do people need? What do they care about? Pain points. What's bothering them right now? And beliefs that you can use to bring relevance to your brands. Let me show you specifically what I mean about these things by sharing some examples. Okay? So needs. Find them out through qualitative research. A lot of times when we talk about market research, people think about surveys and doing studies with lots of people. And that is important. We're going to talk about them in just a moment. But for getting this deep understanding, you want to use qualitative research. That's things like focus groups and one-on-one interviews. These days, you can also use online communities. There's all kinds of new online tools you can use. But this is where you spend a lot of time talking to someone. You spend 1 or 2 hours talking to one or just a few people to get a deep understanding, as opposed to in quantitative where you talk to a lot of people and you make sure you have statistical significance. We're not trying to get to statistical reliability here. When we test things, we'll get there. Here, we're trying to get those deep insights so we can develop marketing that appeals to people's needs, beliefs, and pain points. Okay, so qualitative research. Now, how do you go about doing qualitative research? You can hire a firm like my firm, the Seidewitz Group. The typical budget is about $25,000 to $80,000, which I believe, let me check my notes here, is about, in terms of Mexican pesos, that's about 485,000 to 1.5 million pesos. So we're talking significant amounts of money. How can you get those kind of insights if you don't have that kind of budget? Let me share with you how we did it with this cannabis brand that we worked with, because they didn't have the kind of money of our big corporate clients like Intel and Amgen and others. So what we did was, instead of paying to have a focus group and have it in an expensive focus group facility, the chief operating officer of the company invited all the employees, who were all cannabis users, to come to his house for a party. And while they were there, I gave them each just 3 minutes, and they had to tell their story about why they were medical marijuana users. They were all actually medical marijuana users. Only medical was approved this was in Las Vegas. Only medical marijuana was approved at that time. So they each told their story, and it was amazing about why it was so important to them and the effect that it had on their lives. We heard it from each person, took detailed notes. The other thing we did was we just invited some friends over that we knew were recreational users, and we held a little focus group with them. It was like 6 or 7 people. And again, we had a discussion with them. We talked a little bit more about what makes a certain marijuana experience a great experience versus a not so good experience. But again, we didn't really have to spend any money on that. They were friends. They came over. We gave them some beer. They probably were able to smoke some marijuana while they were there. And, we all had a great time, and we learned a lot. I'll show you what we learned in a moment. The other thing we also did online research. And here's some actual things we found on the internet. And what we searched for was not what other people thought was important to market marijuana. Remember, we're trying to get these deep customer insights. We wanted to find needs, beliefs, and pain points. So we actually went and found customer testimonials where people talked about how they used medical marijuana for different things. And we learned a lot from that as well. Okay, so those are all the things that we did at almost no cost. It was the cost of having a party at somebody's house. And we learned some great things. We learned more than this, but here's an example of the kind of things that we learned. One that we heard from the medical marijuana users was, they might not have even realized this themselves, but when they were talking to us, they started using it for a medical benefit, but what they really liked about it was that psychoactive effect. They liked getting high. We were able to document all the different types of mental and physical benefits that people enjoyed. There was this very strong belief that marijuana helps you enjoy the moment, no matter what the experience is. We even learned that people wanted different effects depending on their mood or their time of day or what kind of activity that they were doing. You'll see that influenced our product development strategy. And we had this other interesting insight, which was, some marijuana gives you a great mind high, some gives you a great body high, and the very best is when it gives you the right effect, the right balanced effect on both your mind and body. So there's an example of the needs, beliefs, and pain points that we learned just through this informal research. So what I want to say is you can do this type of thing. You don't have to spend a ton of money. Just get the people that you're trying to target, talk to them, listen to them, ask them questions, have them tell you their stories. It'll be amazing what you learn, and listen and note down their needs, beliefs, and pain points. Okay? But once you have that, what do you do with it? There are very specific best practices that great brands like Coca-Cola, Nike, Corona, and some of the companies we work with use to turn those insights into powerful brand strategies. Let me share those best practices next. And again, how you can use them on cannabis brands without maybe spending quite as much money as these big companies do. Okay? Something very important to understand and learn about is what's called the positioning concept. So here it is. You'll see the positioning concept has an insight, it has a benefit, and it has reasons to believe. Now again, I chose an older example here so I could share it without worrying about violating confidentiality. But the same principles apply whether it's old or new, or whether it's a business-to-business audience or business-to-consumer audience, or whether you're in the United States or Latin America or Europe or Asia. These are very universal principles that I'll share here. Let me go through each of these components of the positioning concept, starting with the insight and the benefit. Okay, so the insight is exactly what we just talked about. It's that deep customer understanding of the need, belief, or pain point of your customer. Okay, but then in the positioning concept, the benefit, and this is the main focus of what your brand should stand for. It is the unique benefit you want your brand to stand for in your customer's mind. It addresses the need, belief, or pain point that you've gone out and tried to understand. Okay, we'll get to the reasons to believe in a minute, but let's really talk about the relationship between insights and benefits, because strong insights lead to business building and benefits. So remember those three insights that we talked about before. There's a need, there's a belief, and there's a pain point. Okay, let's talk about how we created benefits to pay off each of these. First, with the belief that the best IT system in the world is useless if Carolyn Accounting keeps using her spreadsheets. Okay, how do we pay that off? Very simple. Our client, Intelligence, we position them to say, Intelligence makes IT systems work for everyone in your organization. That might sound simple, but that was a breakthrough benefit in the industry because everyone else was just focused on meeting business needs. Intelligence said, of course we meet your business needs, but we make sure our systems work for everyone in your organization. By repositioning their brand in that way, they grew 72%. The president of Intelligence was quoted in a business journal of saying he was skeptical about business-to-business marketing before this repositioning exercise and the results it delivered. Now, what about this belief? The customer relationships are the driving force behind any small business. Again, that's the insight in your positioning concept. Now, this was for a company that was developing a new system to manage customer information. And they had positioned it around, we make it more efficient for you to manage your customer information. And nobody was really interested. Small businesses were not interested in that. So we took this insight and said, you know, this isn't about being efficient. This is about the importance of those customer relationships. This is the driving force in the industry or for any small business. So we positioned, we're just going to call it Brand X to maintain confidentiality. We positioned Brand X Customer Manager helps you build stronger relationships by putting customer information at your fingertips. By doing that, we'll talk about how you quantitatively test these things in a moment, but in our quantitative testing, we were able to triple demand for the product simply by repositioning what it stood for. Again, based on that insight and this benefit. Now, finally, we have a pain point, the frustration of getting caught in traffic and you don't hear the warning until you're already caught in traffic. So this new GPS device, Magellan Maestro, gives you advance notice to avoid the frustration of sitting in traffic. There was a little bit of complexity in this case study that I can't share, but they did have very strong purchase interest based on this position. Okay, so again, the key theme here is if you have that deep insight and develop the benefit that pays it off, that leads to business building benefits. That's what a brand is ultimately about. It's about driving business results. So your benefits should be important. That's why we start with the insight. They should be single-minded. You know, none of these do we say, well, Intelligence does this and this and this and this. We get it down to one thing. We make IT systems work for everyone in the organization. You could argue that the customer manager one has two ideas there: build stronger relationships by putting your information at your fingertips, but that's really called a functional and emotional benefit. That's okay. The functional benefit is putting information at your fingertips. The emotional benefit is the stronger relationships. As long as they're closely connected, that's a very powerful thing to do. Same with Magellan Maestro. We give you advance notice, functional benefit, to avoid the frustration, emotional benefit. Okay? So how do we do this in the cannabis space? So we had come up with all those things that we learned in the qualitative research. And we came up with more ideas than this, but we narrowed it down to 5 different ways we thought we might position our brand. I won't read through all of these, but the general areas was quality. That, well, one of the insights was when cannabis is really good, you can just see it and smell it before you even try it. It's about enjoying the moment and accentuating that moment. And then we also applied that to Las Vegas, since we were a Las Vegas-based brand. Another one was having choice, so you can tailor the experience to the moment that you're having. And finally, there was one around having the best combination and balance of body and mind benefits to give you that great experience. Okay, we're going to come back to how we tested these, but the main theme here is, number 1, your insights should drive your positioning ideas. Pay them off with benefits. And number 2, don't just settle in on one thing. Come up with some different ideas, and then we're going to talk about how you can test these against each other to see which is the strongest idea. Okay? But this can absolutely be done in the cannabis space, whether you're in North America, South America, or somewhere else. We haven't gotten to the reasons to believe. Let me cover them very quickly. So again, in your positioning concept, you've got your insight, you've got your benefit. Now the reasons to believe, they're exactly what they sound like. They are the reasons to believe that your brand will deliver that benefit that you've promised. So of course they're supposed to make it believable, but also, they can help people just understand what your brand is about. They can help differentiate your brand. And also, they can make your brand benefit be sustainable because they provide the evidence on an ongoing basis that it's really true. Okay? Now, people tend to focus a lot of time talking about features. I'm going to deliver this benefit because my brand has this feature or that feature, and that's fine. And it's important to do that. But there are many other ways that you can convince people that you really will be able to deliver that benefit. You can give them claims or data. You can have other customers, you can have customers give testimonials or people give endorsements. There's a lot of endorsements in the cannabis space. It's probably overused, so you might want to try using some of these others. Visual demonstration is very powerful, or just comparisons and sometimes just explaining things. Let me give you some examples where we've used reasons to believe to support different benefits. So let's go to that Magellan Maestro example. Okay, again, the insight was, man, it is so frustrating when you get that warning after you're already stuck in traffic. The benefit is you get advance notice to avoid being stuck in traffic. Now, how are we going to get you to believe it? Well, 2 things. First of all, it has this Magellan driver network where basically all the different Magellan devices communicate with each other, and in real time they can tell you everywhere in your area what the traffic will be. And I think everybody's got that now. I think it's built into our devices, but it was revolutionary back then. But the other thing we did, that's describing a feature, but look at the visual demonstration. The visual demonstration says it all. So that's an example of using a visual demonstration for your reasons to believe. For that IT systems example, again, you got to make sure that the staff actually uses the system. That was their point of differentiation. That's their benefit they wanted to stand for. And they talked about their different features. The system is designed not only to meet your business needs, but to be user-friendly. They've got a special training program, which actually they developed. They didn't even have a training program before we positioned them this way. They developed a training program, so an example of how positioning informs not only what you say, but also your product development. They provide support. But here's an example of a claim. Not only do we have these things that we're talking about, but we did a study of 500 plus users and found that intelligence systems are utilized 20% more than competitive systems. Okay, again, reasons to believe. For the marijuana brand, we actually came up with a whole bunch of reasons to believe. And since we hadn't decided on which benefit we were moving forward with yet, we weren't sure which we would use. But you can see part of what you want to do here is just brainstorm. Think about that. What are the different features? What are the different claims? What are the different testimonials? What are the different logic or comparisons that we can do? And just get all your ideas down. And once you've decided on your benefit, pick the reasons to believe that will make it most believable and most compelling. Okay? So we've gotten through getting that deep customer understanding, the best practices for brand strategy. We're going to come back to the best practices for actually executing, for developing your ads and other marketing. Let's talk about how we test before we launch so we can be confident that this is actually going to work. So this is where we go to quantitative research. Remember qualitative research. That's when we want to go deep and understand things, get inside people's heads. But it doesn't give us statistical reliability. Anytime you want to test something and have confidence that it's actually going to work, that's when quantitative research comes up. And usually quantitative research, you want to have at least 105 people in your sample, which gives you 70% confidence, which is the absolute minimum to have even kind of directional statistical reliability. But usually you want to try to get higher into the 180, 200, 300, 400, 500 sample size. If you can afford it. The other thing that's different about quantitative research, by the way, is the question is asked the same way every time for every respondent. It's structured. Usually it's programmed into an online survey. Now, it's not just any kind of quantitative research. What's great here is there is a specific type of research to test that positioning concept that I said, the insight, benefit, reason to believe, and it's called the quantitative concept test. What's great about this type of research is that it's one of the few types of research that not only gives you statistical reliability, but you can actually be confident that it actually will predict what happens in market. If if you're testing 5 different positioning ideas and one of them wins in a concept test, it's probably the one that's going to do best in market. Let's talk just a little bit more about a quantitative concept test. So usually you have a sample of at least 165 that gives you 80% confidence. If you can have more, great. And if you're testing 5 different concepts, you want to make sure each is seen by at least 165 users, though you can have them see more than one. Just rotate the order. Again, you usually want to test several concepts. Don't just go in there and pick which concept you're moving forward with. The whole point of doing the concept test is to help you decide which is really going to drive your business results. Now, concept testing has standard metrics. That's the reason we know it works. Because we always ask the same questions in the same way every time. We've been able to see, does it actually predict what happens in market? So there are questions around how likely they are to buy the product based on your positioning strategy, how believable it is, how unique it is, and their perceived value, because we usually show the price. The most important metric is intent to buy. The other ones help you understand why they add high or low purchase intent. These normative comparators, that just means, hey, you can compare it to past concept scores. I know that people are starting to use marijuana, concept testing for marijuana concepts, so you might be able to find normative comparators. The only problem with concept testing is if you hire a firm like ours, it's going to cost you a good $30,000 to $100,000 US dollars. So what do? Well, I'm putting myself out of business here because I'm telling you how to do these things without going to companies like me. These days, and these companies are becoming international in scope. There's SurveyMonkey, Quick Surveys, and other do-it-yourself quantitative research tools. And what's great about these tools, they have concept test templates. You don't have to know how to write a concept test. They've already written the questions for you. They've got intent to buy questions written. They've got believability questions written. They've got uniqueness questions written. They've got value questions written. I think they even have a few more in there. All you need to do is put in the names of the different concepts, upload an image of the concept. Hopefully you know how to, in PowerPoint, just save something as a JPEG or create an image in another way. These tools, they take a little getting used to, but they're pretty easy to use. The other thing that's great is SurveyMonkey. Quick Surveys is a do-it-yourself quantitative research tool that's connected with a research panel company called Tuluna. They have a very good international panel. And I find it's actually quite easy to use. So I recommend you take a look at both SurveyMonkey that everybody knows, but also this Tuluna, T-O-L-U-N-A, Quick Surveys. But take a look at both. But you can actually get the respondents through their panels. You don't have to go get them yourself. You'll have to screen them for marijuana use and have a question in there about it, but you can just bring in people from their panel that use marijuana. It'll cost you, maybe $5,000 to get a good number of respondents, at least 165. But boy, that's a worthwhile investment, and it's a lot less expensive than hiring a company to do it, where it'll cost you $30,000 to $100,000. Okay, you can do this. Go in there, experiment with the concept test template in SurveyMonkey and quick surveys. It is exactly what we did. We used Toluna quick surveys to test these 5 different concept ideas. Now, I'd like you to take a moment and think about which you think won, which delivered the highest purchase intent among marijuana users, which of these 5 positioning ideas. It's going to have you think of it in your own head before I tell you which one. Okay? And the winner was, drum roll, actually there was a tie between choice, being able to choose the marijuana that gives you the experience that you want, to be able to enjoy the moment you want in the way that you want it was the choice one. It really tied almost exactly with this giving you the perfect balance of mind benefits and body benefits. Both of them had very high purchase intent score, 84%, 83%. We also had them rank these 5, and these 2 consistently were in the top 2 more than the others. But you can see all of them scored very well. These are very strong concept scores. And literally 84% of people aren't going to buy, but in comparing across them, you can really rely on these numbers. So we did the concept test. It was very clear it was one of these 2. We decided that balance of mind and body was the more differentiating positioning, so we decided to move forward with that. And here's what we came up with. And you can see the name even was created based on the positioning. Introducing BAM quality marijuana. We'll start with an insight. Marijuana has benefits for your body and your mind. The best is when you get the perfect combination of mind and body together. Now let's go to the benefit. Introducing body and mind, BAM quality marijuana. It gives you the perfect balance of body and mind to help you enjoy every moment. Now the reasons to believe. Our 15-year crossbreeding program with strains from all over the world helped develop the perfect balance of body and mind benefits. We handcrafted in small batches without synthetic pesticides for quality you can see, and we have naturally high THC levels ensuring potency every time. Okay, that is the brand positioning strategy we created using the techniques that big brands use, and we did it for a lot less money. And you can absolutely do this as well using these techniques. So we tested, we started with deep customer understanding. We used the best practices to develop the strategy, and we tested before we launched to pick out the right strategy. The only thing we haven't covered yet is what are the best practices for then executing and actually developing the ads and the other marketing in implementing the brand strategy. Let me cover that now. Okay? So by far, the #1 execution best practice is that strategy drives execution. Let me show you what I mean by that. When you have a positioning concept that you've spent all this time getting inside the customer's head, understanding their needs, beliefs, and pain points, picking out that benefit that you want to stand for, developing those reasons to believe that make it believable and different, and then testing it to make sure it's the right one. You don't have to worry that much about this positioning strategy brief. That's what big companies use. The main thing you need to make sure, now the ad example I'm giving you is for Invisalign and for a hair salon. So it's not actually for the Magellan concept because I wasn't able to dig up the advertising. But the main thing is that advertising better communicate what's in your positioning concept. If it doesn't, you've wasted all your time and probably you're not going to succeed in the market, at least not nearly at the level as if you actually follow what's in the positioning concept. You don't have to say it word for word. The idea of the marketing execution is to make it engaging and entertaining and fun, but you need to get the takeaway to be what's in the positioning concept. This is the #1 reason why brands fail. I can't tell you how many times we've worked with clients and they've developed this great positioning concept that's tested really well in concept testing, and then their ad agencies bring back advertising that has nothing to do with the positioning. If you hire somebody to do your advertising or you do it in-house, make sure it delivers on the positioning benefit. Second principle for the second best practice for marketing execution is that strategy drives execution. That is absolutely the most important thing you can do, so I have it twice. And finally, in executing, come up with a compelling, creative idea to bring the strategy to life. You want to communicate the strategy, but make it fun, engage people, hit them in the gut. So let me show you how we did that with our cannabis brand, BAM Quality Marijuana. First of all, just the logo itself. We captured the name. If you just read this, you can kind of get the whole idea. BAM, body and mind, the perfect balance. We always made sure that was included in all the packaging. We always said the perfect balance. You'll notice here we've got heavy hitters and also morning, noon, and night pre-roll 3-packs. That's based on, we heard that people want different types of marijuana effects at different times of the day and based on different activities that they're doing. So again, what we learned helped inform our product development. We executed this very clearly on the website, and we tried to visualize that enjoying every moment, the perfect balance to let you enjoy every moment. At the point of sale, it's a little washed out. Our tagline is at the top. And actually, the most fun thing that I think we did was we developed this whiteboard video. It cost us a little more than $1,000. So unlike the Invisalign ad, where they probably spent $100,000 or $200,000, we were able to do this in $100,000. And I think it's oops, I'm sorry. Let me go back.
This is Don, Director of Product Development at BAM Quality Marijuana. He's been on a mission for 15 years, collecting the best marijuana strains from all over the world. He found some strains with great body benefits and some strains with great mind benefits by crossbreeding the best plants again and again and again. Don created strains with the perfect balance of body and mind benefits. Introducing BAM Quality Marijuana. We've taken Don's amazing strains and we grow them naturally in small batches without using synthetic pesticides. Our master growers lovingly care for our plants by hand, giving every plant the personal attention it needs. We never mass-produce products here at BAM. This results in handcrafted quality you can see, and every batch is lab tested to ensure purity and potency. Now you can experience the perfect balance of body and mind with BAM Quality Marijuana products. Ask your bud tender for BAM Quality Marijuana. Available in flower, vapes, joints, and solvent-free concentrates.
Happened? Did these results work, or did these techniques work in the cannabis area? I showed you how they worked in other industries, but do they work in the cannabis area? We were able to use them, but did they deliver the results? Well, first of all, one of our primary goals was my client didn't have a dispensary. So we had to make sure that the 30 other dispensaries that all had their own brands that they carried our brand. And we got 22 of 30 Southern Nevada dispensaries to carry our brand. We had by far the best distribution of any brand in the market. We became the #1 medical marijuana brand. So clearly this was successful. Once recreational was approved in Nevada, a lot of lower cost brands moved in, but BAM is still one of the top 5 recreational brands. So still the brand is still very powerful. And the last thing I'll say is, like many other US companies, the company that owned BAM Quality Marijuana got purchased by a Canadian company. But that Canadian company recognized the power of this brand that we had created. And instead of their name being the name for the new merged company, they took on the name Body and Mind Inc. for the Canadian holding company. Today, there is a company on the Canadian Securities Exchange named Body and Mind Inc. And that truly shows you the power of a great brand. So, how do you create great cannabis brands? How do great cannabis brands succeed? Well, in the same way that other great brands succeed. You start with a deep customer understanding, those needs, beliefs, and pain points. Then you use the best practices that I've shared here. Create that positioning concept with an insight, a benefit, and reasons to believe. And then when you execute, when you create your marketing, Be sure to communicate what's in the positioning concept, but do it in a way that's interesting and engaging, like that fun video that we did. And finally, test before you launch. Come up with multiple ideas and do a concept test to see which one is the strongest. If you do these things, I have complete confidence that you too will be able to build a cannabis brand that is a powerhouse. Thank you very much. And I would be more than happy to go ahead and take some questions from you.
Hi, Scott. Thank you for joining us today for the question and answers and for the presentation, of course.
Absolutely. Excited to be here.
I think that is definitely something that is important in cannabis. So we have some questions for you today. The first question that I have is, I think what they're asking is, in the people that are seeking medicinal cannabis like CBD, are they looking for the same thing as a pharmaceutical use? So do they have the same needs when they're looking for CBD or medicinal cannabis as when they're looking for their pharmaceutical drugs?
Well, the only way you're going to really answer that question is to go and use some of the techniques I talked about and talk to these people, because only they can answer any customer insight question like that. But I will tell you, my company works with a lot of pharmaceutical companies, and we did this one project with medical marijuana users. And, I went over it very briefly, but one of the secret little things about the medical marijuana users that I'm not sure if they even quite recognize, but it was very clear when we talked to them, is they started using it for medical reasons, and they do appreciate the medical benefits. But for the medical marijuana users, I'll get to CBD in just a moment. For the medical marijuana users, they really like the psychoactive effect and all the impact that has on their lives, and their enjoyment drives it much more than their perceived medicinal benefits. And that's how we were able to position that BAM marijuana in such a way about the body and mind benefits, which was really kind of playing to those psychoactive benefits, and became the #1 medical marijuana brand in the market. Now, when it comes to CBD products, there's not a psychoactive effect. There's not the high. I still don't think that it's the same as a pharmaceutical where you're getting a prescription. It's more like a consumer product, like Crest toothpaste or Colgate toothpaste, or ibuprofen or aspirin. So I would think of it more not where there's a doctor prescribing it per se, because unless the laws are different outside of the United States, probably they're going to make their own decisions. So think about other medicinal consumer products as more of the example than pharmaceutical products.
Sure, thank you. Very well said. Okay, so we'll move on to the next question. So this person was asking, they were saying that there are about 1,000 brands of CBD oils in California, for example, and it's really hard to stand out in these brands. Do you have an example of any other industry that has the same challenges as this?
Well, there are many industries that are immature, like CBD, and have not yet consolidated. Over time, the industry will consolidate, and it'll get down to a few brands, so it'll be the winners. Just off the top of my head, let me mention, this is not a consumer example, but the same principles really apply. I showed the example of Intelligence, which is in information systems supplier. So they go into companies and develop, software and systems that the employees within a company use. And there are tons of these firms, and it's very difficult to differentiate. They all do the same thing. Some might be better at understanding the business needs and create better systems. But when you're doing your marketing, how do you say, well, we do it better? It's just like anybody can say that. CBD oil, we do it better. So what we did with them was we dug into the consumer. We tried to find, was there some need that was not being met or that we could meet better? Was there a belief that we could tap into? Was there a pain point? And in their example, and I showed examples of pain points and beliefs, but in their example, there was this unmet need that nobody had really thought about. Our client hadn't even thought about it. It kind of hit us in the face as we started talking to their customers, and we found out, you know what? All these other firms always deliver systems that work, but sometimes our employees don't adopt them and don't start using them So it was a waste of our money if the employees won't use it. It was that insight that allowed us to differentiate in a field with lots of competitors. So I would say, go and talk to some people who either are using CBD oil or are interested in using it. And find out what their needs are and find something nobody else is talking about and meet that need to differentiate yourself.
Perfect. I'm seeing a theme here. Talk to your clients and your
That's right.
customers.
Yeah.
Okay, so kind of, I guess, relating to that last question, or then that last response, is this person was asking, if I want to do the survey myself, how do I find the 165 people to send the survey to?
Right. No, that's the wonderful thing about these do-it-yourself surveys. If you just like write up a survey by hand, you're not going to be able to find the people. But if you go to SurveyMonkey or Tuluna Quick Surveys, Tuluna Quick Surveys, TOLUNA Quick Surveys. I just happen to like that one. They both have what's called research panels attached to them. So SurveyMonkey has, I don't know, like 12 million people internationally. I believe their panel is international, that you can draw from to take surveys on their platform. Tuluna, I think, has 6 million. I do know it's international. But you can literally go in there and say, I want women of the ages 18 to 35 in these areas. The one thing you'll have to put in is this screening. Have you used marijuana in the last 6 months? And I guess you'd only want people who have. But literally, you're paying for it. You pay a fee per completed interview, but to get a survey of 165, 200, 300, you're talking a few $1,000s instead of tens of thousands of hiring a firm like me. It's a worthwhile investment. You can get the users through these do-it-yourself platforms.
Perfect. Okay, so we have one more question for you. And this person was asking, of all of the different products and services that you see in cannabis, where do you see the biggest lack of branding?
Oh, goodness. I'm going to have a really difficult time answering that because I'm an expert in doing this brand strategy work and in understanding the consumer to drive it. I've just worked a little bit in cannabis and have not studied the industry thoroughly. I understand it enough to know these techniques work. And I've worked in many industries where people have said, oh, well, it's not going to work with our consumers. I've never found an industry where it doesn't work, and we've used it in cannabis and it's succeeded. I can't say I know the industry well enough to be able to say, here's where the biggest problem is. But I will say this, actually, now that I think of it, based on the previous question and just how many people have come to me to say, can you help us with branding? It does seem to be the CBD space is the area where everybody is struggling to differentiate. So that's probably the area. Also give the other answer. Edibles and consumables like beverages. There's some great branding going on in that area. Back when I worked with this brand, we did a lot of benchmarking. We found some great branding. There's a consumable brand out of Colorado. I'm forgetting the name, but it's doing some great branding work.
Perfect. Great answer. Thank you so much. Well, that is the last question that we have for you today. So I just want to give you a big thank you for the presentation. Absolutely. And for coming to chat with us.
Oh, it's been a real pleasure. And this is a really interesting, fun space to work in. I wish everybody the best.
Thank you.